Hey y'all, it's Van Lufa here. Just home from work. I didn't even bother to change out of my scrubs. I sweat all my makeup off. It is what it is right now. I am going to give you a recap of day one from the Derek Chauvin trial. It takes place in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So I'll give you a little recap. I'm not going to tell you every single thing that happened, but I'll give you a good recap of today's events. So let's get started. If you know, you know. Okay, day one started at 9 a.m. The first thing that they went through was the opening statements, of course, after Judge Cahill gave the jury their instructions, and that took a little while. So then they went, so at the very beginning, they did deal with one motion first before they brought the jury in. The motion, and it was a motion made by the state, and it was basically a reminder that the parties stick to the court's rulings of using objective statements, not subjective statements. An example would be saying that maybe Mr. Floyd faked distress or he was trying to resist arrest, etc. That is a subjective statement. That is something that you are observing, and you can't speak for him. So what they wanted them to do was make it more objective and say things like, he appeared to be doing this. This is what he appeared to do, so that it was, not subjective. So they talked about that motion. The judge said, yes, absolutely. Let's stick to that, men. Okay, so then the jurors got their instructions, and then they started the opening statements. The opening statements for the state were given by Jerry Blackwell. And he started out showing a PowerPoint presentation, discussed what the mission of the Minneapolis Police Department is, and then he went on to describe the events of George Floyd's arrest and death. He also, of course, they have to play on the heartstrings of the emotions, for the jurors and everything. So he did give quotes that Mr. Floyd said that day, like, I can't breathe, and, tell my kids I love them, and all that kind of stuff. It was heartbreaking. Then he showed like a PowerPoint presentation and showed a timeline of exactly everything that happened from the time that he was arrested until the time that they put him in the ambulance on a gurney. He also talked about, remember, 9 minutes and 29 seconds. That was apparently the amount of time that Mr. Chauvin had his knee on his neck. Also, and then he kind of explained the witnesses and who the state was going to call to testify. He talked about experts in the use of force. There's a gentleman from the LAPD who's an expert in this and will be testifying. And then he also wanted to make a point to say that all of this was over a counterfeit $20 bill. Then he showed the bystander video in its entirety. And I'll admit, it was the first time I had seen it in its entirety because it's difficult to watch. So it was hard. And today this video was shown a lot, as well as other surveillance footage and other cell phone videos. And so it was difficult to watch today. He also talks about intent of the police officers at the time. And just basically told us about what we can expect to hear from the witnesses. And also he talks about the biopsy results for George Floyd and what they found and what that means and how they'll prove to us, what their side is. The next person to speak was Eric Nelson, who is the attorney for Mr. Chauvin. He just gives the jurors an idea about reasonable doubt and common sense. He also talked about who would be testifying for the defense. He mentioned that the clerk that was in the store will be testifying for them. Excuse me, I have to take a drink. They will also, I think as everybody expects, to be talking about the drugs that he was under the influence on. I do believe they'll probably make a big deal out of that because that's, one of their main points, I guess. And they will, they also showed footage of the struggle the police had with him. They're going to really highlight that, I'm sure. Because they want to show that Mr. Floyd was resisting arrest, dangerous, very unruly, all of those types of things. He's also going to teach the jurors about the Minneapolis Police Department policies and procedures and use of force, and talk about the training that they have had in the past. And they will also bring forth the medical examiner, Dr. Baker, to discuss the autopsy results. At this point, there was a morning recess. And then when they came back from the recess, the lead attorney for the state by the name of Steve Schleicher called the state's first witness. Okay. The state's first witness was a female by the name of Jenna Lee Scurry, and she was the 911 dispatcher who dispatched the calls to police. Now, this phone call was made by the store worker who took the counterfeit $20 bill on Mr. Floyd. So somebody else took the call, and then it went to her, and she dispatched it to the police. She had a long discussion about the different precincts and how many officers are in each precinct in each sector, and it was a whole thing, but I won't go into that. But they did talk a lot about that. Talked about how 911 calls are made and dispatched. Then they had Exhibit 151, and that was a transcript of the call. So not only did we hear the call, but they also had it typed out. And so they showed that. It came from the store worker. Exhibit 10 was the actual phone call. We listened to that. We also watched a street video, and that was surveillance from cameras that are, up in various areas of Minneapolis for situations such as this. The Exhibit 11 was a video footage of the cops at Cup Foods. So this took place in front of Cup Foods in Minneapolis. During this 911 dispatch call, the 911 operator was watching footage of cams as it was taking place live. They have screens in their rooms that can show live camera footage. And it just so happened that this particular arrest and everything that happened was also live in front of them. So she was watching it, then she would kind of work a little bit, and then she'd watch it. So periodically she would keep looking up at the TV to watch the footage live, which rarely happens, she said. And so she kind of watched that. And as she was watching it, she herself noticed that it was taking too long, and that, they were restraining Mr. Floyd forever. She felt like it was not right. And so she did actually make a call to their sergeant, who is their supervisor. 911 dispatchers do have the option of doing that if need be. And apparently anytime that there's use of force, then the sergeant's usually called. She was concerned enough that day that she called him herself. She called and said, "I don't mean to be a snitch, but," and she had been a 911 dispatcher for almost 9 years. And she said this is the first time that she's ever had anything like this happen where she called the sergeant. At that point, then it was lunch break. Then when we came back from lunch, there was cross-examination of this witness by Eric Nelson for the defense. He was just asking her about the different duties of 911 dispatchers. They looked at the transcript again. Apparently she had sent backup, or had attempted to send backup to this scene, because when the 911 call came in, she heard some loud noises in the background, and so she thought maybe she ought to get some more officers there. And so Eric Nelson was questioning her why she did that, questioning the different call times that calls came in, and that, you know, all of that type of thing. Questioning, you know, like when the EMS was called and when they got there and all those kinds of things. So he worked really hard on trying to discredit anything she had to say as far as what she watched live, because he had to remind her that she did not have audio, so she couldn't hear what was being said, and also had to remind her that she is not a police officer, so, you know, how dare she question what they do, is basically what he was trying to say. He was also questioning her about her statement that she made to the BCA on June 20th. And then Mr. Schleicher from the state redirected. He showed Exhibit 151 again, which was the transcript, and then spoke to her about the cameras and what she was watching. And basically what he was trying to show here was that the people in the 911 center do not control what footage comes up on those TVs that they watch. That basically that's controlled by the police department. So he was trying to say that somebody else was controlling that so they could take it down or put it up whenever they wanted. State's witness number 2. Well, this one was interesting. She was a 23-year-old female, Alicia Euler is her name. She worked at the Speedway convenience store right across the street. She was the shift lead that day. She had been working there for a year. Exhibit 1 was a map of the scene. She pointed out like where the incident took place, where she was standing, all that kind of stuff. Of note, and I did look at the chat because I wanted to see if I was crazy, but of note, I believe she was heavily under the influence of something. And I looked in the chat and everybody else thought so too. She looked high as hell. And she clearly did not want to be there. She made it very well known that she didn't want to be there. At one point even saying, I hate this, you know. She mumbled her answers, yes and no, talked very softly. It was hard to understand. She just was miserable being there, you could tell. She got a little bit better towards the end of her interview, but I don't know, I didn't find her very credible. She recorded the incident from her cell phone, 7 videos, 2 videos from inside the convenience store, and then 5 from outside of the store when she was on her break. Those were exhibits 2 through 8, which were her videos. And exhibit 9 was the surveillance video from the convenience store. And then they watched all the videos and discussed everything, discussed what she had seen, what she had heard, her vantage point from where she was standing, blah, blah, blah. On cross-examination by Eric Nelson, he was also questioning where she was standing inside of the Speedway. He also questioned her statement from May 28th of 2020 to Brent Peterson, who works for the BCA, questioning, I guess, she had apparently told that gentleman back in June of last year that there was a female police officer on the scene. There wasn't, but so he was trying to discredit her, was what that was basically. Which, I mean, he didn't have to try very hard because she just kept saying, I don't know, I don't remember, I don't know. So, and she asked for questions to be repeated a lot. She just, I don't know. And I wrote, not real friendly or open. She made it known she didn't want to be there. And then on the redirect by the state, I guess he was just talking about the crowd, how if she had noticed what the large crowd was, and then just how well she could see Mr. Floyd, during this incident. And then the state's third witness was a gentleman by the name of Donald Williams. He was a bystander at the scene. He was not filming, but he was a bystander there. And if you look at the footage, he was the black man that was standing there really watching them at the beginning before even a crowd, came and joined to watch. Mr. Williams is 33 years old. He's a professional MMA fighter, an entrepreneur. He also has 10 years of security experience. In his position as a professional MMA fighter, he also teaches mixed martial arts and has taught police officers in the past as well. He claims to be very knowledgeable in chokeholds and restraints and all that type of thing. He was not happy about what they were doing to him. They just asked him why he was there. He went to cut foods with his son after they went fishing. He wanted to get something to drink. Then they showed several photographs. I think it was like exhibits 18, 19, and 20, just of him outside of cut foods, I guess just to place him there at the scene. Nothing exciting there. They just asked him what he observed at the scene. And then, before the feed cut out, because the feed did cut out at the end, he kept saying that he saw Mr. Chauvin do some shimmy moves. And so the attorney was asking him, what is a shimmy move? He explained it. And then they watched the bystander video, and he commented every time he saw them, Mr. Chauvin making this shimmy move, whatever that is. And at that point, the feed cut out. So they were going to 4:30. And it was probably 4:20 by that time anyway. So, it was at the very end. It wasn't just the feed for Law and Crime Network, but apparently it was all of the feed that was coming out of the courtroom. So as I was watching the live chat then, they were saying that they were just going to go ahead and wrap up for the day. The judge was just talking to the jury, giving them instructions, all of that kind of stuff. So, it ended a little prematurely today, but not horribly. And that was it for today. So I guess tomorrow, first thing, Mr. Williams will be back on the stand. I suppose the state will finish questioning him if they have any further questions. And then Eric Nelson will do a cross-examination on this gentleman. He seemed to be very, very knowledgeable, very dedicated, very disciplined in MMA and all that. He was just a talker. And I think even at one point, the state attorney stopped him because, kind of you're talking too much, bro, But so that was interesting. It just made me realize that this is going to be a long trial. They said 4 weeks. I hope so. Because with all the witnesses they have for the state and for the defense, we're going to go through it, guys. But anyway, that is my recap for day 1, Monday, March 29th. And I'll keep continuing to do this. And sorry you had to look at me like this, but it was a whole thing why I had to go to work today. Not going to get into it here. But thank you for watching Van Lufus channel, where I'm the #1 source of the Derek Chauvin trial. Not really. I'm just an old grandma that likes to watch it. Thought I'd pass along some stuff to you. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.